let's start for the second part of migration strategy to the cloud. And we'll be hoping others will be joining us soon as we go. So, thank you so much for joining initially on this weekend evening. And thanks, Kasam, once again for arranging all these things. This session is going to be on migration strategy to cloud again on Microsoft Azure. And I'm sure people who are new to this, I'm sure Feroz Khan, I go with Feroz, but then like quite long name, Abdul Rasheed Feroz Khan. I'm the founder and CEO of CodeSizzler, a Microsoft partner network on, in consulting and migrating the workloads from Azure on-premise to Azure and setting up hybrid cloud environments. And we are also silver partners with, we have a silver partnership with Microsoft on application development, app integration, and data center as well. I have my email ID here. You can keep me reached from my email ID if you have any clarifications or if you have any like support that you're looking for or like training or migration tasks, feel free to reach me out. Here I go, a short network of mine. I'm a Microsoft MVP on Azure. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer as well. And I give my contributions as a Azure Cloud advocate, advising Microsoft on the certification tracks to get it updated and having the content review as well. I have a 10 years of experience as a cloud consultant. I work with the three giants of CSPs, Azure, AWS, and Google Cloud Platform. And my core expertise was said to be in.
Hi guys, is the meeting started?
Yes, we have just started and we are on call. Yeah. So my core expertise is said to be on ML, infrastructure maintenance, migration, app development on Xamarin, and big data IoT workloads. So with this, let me start with today. See, today we are going to make sense. We are going to work with Azure Backup. Okay, we'll make sense about Azure Backup. We'll also be making sense on ASR, your Azure Site Recovery, and we just go on. So here is about your environment where we are going to start with the Azure Backup overview. So here in this deck, I'm going to discuss about the backup architecture, your Azure VM backup architecture. And we'll also be discussing about the Microsoft Azure Backup overview and the backup features that we have, the backup key features, your Azure IaaS backup components, and a bit in about Recovery Service Vault. And we'll be having a short tour on which we're going to explore how this ASR works, how the Azure to Azure Site Recovery works. So the demo and the concepts that we are going to cover today is set to be a continuation of the previous, webinar that we had. So the previous webinar, we were migrating an entire workload. It was like web application in the database, which was on Azure. And this is set to be like, today's session is going to be about taking a backup on the workloads, which is already, let's say, running on Azure, and how the Azure to Azure Site Recovery, Azure to Azure Replication can work, and how you can set up a TR plans, what are the steps that you need to take care of such. So I will be here starting with the architecture of the Azure VM backup. We'll make sense about how the VM can be performed with a backup operation. So here we go with this Azure backup architecture. See, this is how you will be having your architecture. Microsoft as an extension inside of every VM that we come across. So when you configure a backup, it communicates with the Azure Backup Service, and that's going to be associated. You see here we have a configure. Okay, so it's going to communicate with the Azure Backup Service, and it associates itself to a policy. So this identifies itself to a Azure Backup Service as a VM, and here now we are going to come up with a service which can back up accordingly. So you have a service called Azure Backup. It will be coming up with a policy management. And every VM on which you're going to configure will be having an extension of this, and it's going to perform the backup for us. So the backup is going to be like this. When it's time for backup, as per the backup policy that you've configured, Microsoft sends a command to the Azure Backup extension, and then the Azure Backup orchestrates a snapshot for you. And once when the snapshot is available, it goes to your local VM, and you'll be having storage as an instant recovery snapshot, which you can quickly recover from your Azure VM storage. And there in the background, you also have the snapshot, which is compared to a snapshot that would be previously taken. So it's going to be like a recovery point, and that moves only the incremental blocks with the help of HTTPs into your recovery service vault. The recovery service vault also has like encryption. You see here, I'm sorry, I missed it. So you have the recovery service vault, which has encryption, and it will be enabled via SSE, your server-side encryption. So the backup is encrypted at rest, and this is going to be provided with your Azure key vault as well, and it's protected while it's going to be on transit. You can also use like the key encryption, or you can go with BitLocker encryption keys, and that will keep your backed up data to be encrypted. So going with this migration, you would also make sense about like the Azure backup in an overview. So this is how the architecture works like. I mean, the step-by-step execution of how the backup works is said to be on this point. So when you go to your Azure workloads, you first need to configure to take a backup. So here you find we have the Azure backup overview. So here in this Azure backup overview, we have like the service which offers IT administrators with a role to back up and protect the critical data, which is easily recoverable from any location. You also have the Azure Backup Service, which provides a new way to deliver business continuity benefits to Windows Server 2012 customers by providing a backup solution that requires no upfront hardware cost for you. This is pretty simple. It's very simple for you to integrate, and it also helps you when you go with the efficient backup and recovery. It has a very flexible configuration. So the configuring your Azure backup is not like a big deal. It's like very simple that you can configure at your own. So to implement this Azure backup, you go with having your System Center 2012 Service Pack 1 Data Protection Manager, where the customers will get the added option to select online backup as a short-term recovery goal. The Microsoft Azure Backup is like a cloud-hosted backup solution that provides you with file and folder backup capabilities for Windows Server 2012, Windows Server 2012 R2 Data Center, and also for your Windows Server 2008 R2 computers. The Azure Backup Agent can back up either like folders, or it can be even backup with files. And the customers can use System Center 2012 Service Pack 1 with the Data Protection Manager to back up the file or the volume. You can also back up like SQL servers or Hyper-V workloads towards your Azure online storage using this backup. Here are more key features that you can make sense. The Azure Backup Service integrates with the familiar Windows Server backup utility in Windows Server, and you have the Data Protection Manager component in your System Center and Windows Server Essentials in order to provide a seamless backup and recovery experience to a local disk or to the cloud environment as well. You can work with this just by using the PowerShell scripts. You have the PowerShell script CLI environment, or you even go with your UI kind of environment, which is like the capabilities that we have to work on it. And you also have the block level incremental backups. So the Microsoft Azure Backup Agent performs incremental backups by tracking the file and block level changes. And it also goes with transferring the change logs, and it will help you in reducing the storage and the bandwidth utilization. So there is like the data integrity as well, which we have in the cloud environment here. It helps you to go with, you see here we have the data integrity. So in addition to the secure backups, the backup data is also automatically checked for integrity once when the backup is done or not. And as a result, like any corruption which may arise due to data transfer can be easily identified, and it can be fixed as well automatically. You can also configure retention policies for storing data in the cloud. So the Azure Backup Service accepts and implements the retention policy to recycle the backups that exceeds the desired retention range, And thereby you will be having like meeting business policies, and you can manage the backup cost as well. We then have the components, your Azure infrastructure's backup components. So you see, we have like a couple of components. One is set to be for the backup server, the Azure backup server, and you also have the Azure IaaS VM backup. The Azure portal provides you like a wizard, which is going to help you through the process of choosing the component to download and to deploy as well. You should have seen this in the previous demo, right? We had like a backup options which we were exploring. So this wizard will be having a part of the recovery service vault, and it can the portal itself gives you a step-by-step execution of how you can walk through to perform the backup codes. So here, depending on the individual component, Azure component will have certain advantages or limitations as you see in the screen. For the backup server, you see the first Azure backup server. No? Here, the benefits is that you would be able to perform app-aware snapshots, and you will also be taking up the flexibility of mentioning the policy of when to take the backups and the recovery for the granularity. And you can also use recovery service vault here. You can use the recovery service vault, and you will have like Linux support on the Hyper-V and the VMware VMs. You can also go with the VMware VMs to take a backup and restore the VMs, and it does not look for a system setter license to get it performed. The limitation here is that as of now, we have like a preview feature, but then you cannot take a backup for an Oracle download. We just have it as a preview feature, which was recently implemented. And it's now running as a beta service. And you also have it like always requires live Azure subscription. Yes, if you don't have an Azure subscription, you will not be able to perform backup. And here we don't have the support for any tape kind of backups. So if your question is like, what are the files, or I mean, what are the components that you can perform with a backup, then it would be like, I would say you go with files, folders, right, storage volumes, VMs, and you can also go with applications and the workloads to take a backup. So the component which we are going to use, I would say the service which you're going to use on Azure is said to be recovery service vault, and all your data will be stored towards from locally attached disk towards the storage volume, which is going to be a component of your recovery service vault. We then have this Azure IaaS with a VM backup. So the advantage of this is said to be like a native backup that you perform for Windows or for Linux flavors, and we will not be having any agent which has to be installed, and it's going to perform a fabric level of backup without any infrastructure need. So it makes like your backup of operation to be performed in an ease. The limitation here we have is to be like it can just backup like VMs for once in a day. You can schedule a policy and that can run only for once in a day. You can also restore the VMs on your disk level, and you would not be able to perform the backup which is said to be running at the on-premise, whereas your Azure backup server helps you when it runs on a on-premise environment. So here you can perform backups for VMs, which is on Azure, or you can even perform the backups with all the disks that you have attached to its virtual machines using the PowerShell scripts. And this is going to be a component of your recovery service vault. The recovery service vault looks like this. If you go with your Azure subscription, you can find the recovery service vault. It's a storage entity basically that has been equipped with Azure, and the data is typically like copies of data, or it goes with the configuration information for your VM. You will be having workloads, servers, or even the workstations on which you can take a backup, and you can set a recovery point as well. So for a backup in your ASR, you see at the left under operations, you have the backup option. So you can use recovery service vault to hold this backup data for various Azure service like your IaaS VMs, which can include Windows or Linux flavors, and even for like Azure SQL databases. The recovery service vault supports System Center DPM, Windows Server, Azure Backup Server, and even more. So the recovery service vault makes it easy to organize your backup data while you will be minimizing the management overhead. So here you see like it can provide a secure backup of your data. It can do a monitoring of what backup operation is performed. And you can even provide access saying that it's going to be like a role-based access control. It's like a fine-grained access management control in Azure, and you will come up with Azure Backup, which has like 3 built-in roles to manage the recovery points. The recovery service is also compatible with role-based access control that restricts the backup and restores the access to the defined set of user roles. We then have Azure to Azure Site Recovery. So with Azure's site-to-site recovery, you can replicate the Azure VMs to any other Azure location. And you don't need like any infrastructure to deploy. You can just pair it using the regions coming up with the service of ASR. So this mobility service extension is automatically deployed to protect the machines as a part of the production process here. So let's make sense in detail. So we're gonna explore about ASR with Azure to Azure Site Recovery, Azure to Azure architecture discussion, and also about like Azure to Azure Site Recovery on network traffic component. And we'll also be making sense about how the VM production is going to work and configuring the same with replication plans, enabling the replication, doing a drill test, and we will go with a demo. Okay, I mean like video in the sense you can find the recording video on the YouTube channel of Dear Azure. So here with, I repeat, with Azure to Azure Site Recovery, you can replicate the Azure VMs to any other Azure location and you no need of an infrastructure to deploy for it. So this is how your Azure to Azure Site Recovery works. So you can replicate the VMs, you can replicate the virtual networks, availability sets, your storage accounts as well. And optionally, you can even specify your own VNets or storage accounts and availability sets as well. The replication here happens on HTTPS channel, which is said to be like you have even port 443 and then Azure aggregation cost, which occurs for outbound traffic from an primary region, data center region. So you see, this is the architecture that we have. With DR setup, you see with this is set to be a disaster recovery setup. You find failover and there's a secondary region, the target environment that we have. The source environment that we are using here is set to be East US, and the target environment that we are using here is set to be like a Central US. So with DR setup, Azure VMs will continuously replicate from the source to a different target region. And if an outage occurs, you can failover VMs to the secondary region. And you can access them when everything runs normally again, you can come back with a failover, okay, and you will continue working in the primary region itself. So the very first step that you see here is that VM is registered with the ASR. You see the VM here. Give me a moment. Can you see this? We have VM. So this VM is registered with ASR, and the VM is in a source region which is said to be East US here. The data is continuously replicated towards the cache data. You can find here the second process. And thirdly, the cache is replicated towards the target location. You will be having a storage account and the cache is going to be replicated for the same. And during the failover, the VM is added towards the target environment. So this process of adding towards the target environment is going to be the responsibility of Microsoft Azure. ASR takes the legacy application request to move from to survive from the primary data center region towards the secondary data center region. We then have the Azure to Azure Site Recovery. That is you can manage the network traffic. So here the network traffic is that ASR traffic is only like outbound from the protected VMs. So if you're using a URL-based firewall proxy to control the outbound connectivity, you can go with like storage account rights, which can go with a Unix storage account name added with blob.co.windows.net. That's set to be a REST endpoint. And for any authorization or authentication to perform with ASR URLs, you can go with the Microsoft's directory, which is login.microsoftonline.com. And you will see like for ASR service communication channel, we have the Hyper Recovery 1 manager with Windows Azure. You can monitor and diagnostics as well using the service bus. So here you see an example where the site recovery service and the site recovery monitoring IP address for the Central US region is represented. To perform the Azure to Azure VM protection, we go with this, like you have an option in the recovery service vault. You can say add, and you can say that you'll be performing like Azure to Azure VM replication. You can here establish your recovery service vault in a different location other than where the VMs residing. So let's say, for example, if your source is set to be at here, it's set to be at East US, then your target you can say it's going to be a Central US, and in Central US you need to configure the ASR. We will then configure the ASR. So configuration is because Azure to Azure Site Recovery is managed as a software as a service, and there's no infrastructure to create for you, and there'll be like no agents or providers which has to be installed. We will begin with the first step, which is said to be like the case to replicate the application, and the system will automatically install the ASR mobility service on each protected VM in the background. So here to perform replication, you have these options. Okay, you will go to the vault. You see here, this is set to be a recovery service vault. Select the source. You put up the source location. You say the source is going to be on Azure. Okay, and the source resource group also has to be selected over here. And once when these things are selected, you also put up the VM. The second part is set to be with the virtual machine. You will select the VM and the VNet, okay, on which it's running on. And thirdly, the settings. You see here the settings on which you'll be configuring it. So settings is that you're just going to come up with, and you'll see the target location, the target subscription, the target resource group on which has to run, and we will also be having a VNet, storage accounts, and replicated management disks over here. We also have an option to select like availability sets and availability zones over here. By any time you can even like say, can you see this? We have a customize icon. So you can click on customize and you can say that you'll be customizing the target resource. We then have the replication settings. So Azure goes with multi-VM consistency. In a multi-VM consistency, you can select the VMs which you want to replicate together, and all the machines in a replication group will have a shared crash consistent and app consistent recovery points when it's set to be on failover. So enabling multi-VM consistency can impact workload performance like CPU workloads, which is intensive. And it should be used only if machines are running the same workload and you need consistency across multiple machines as such. Let's say if an application has two SQL virtual machines and two web servers, no, then you should add like one SQL virtual machine as a part of the replication group. You can also choose to have at the maximum of 16 virtual machines in a replication group. And you can, if you enable multi-VM consistency, the machine in the replication group will communicate with each other over the port of, let's say, 20,004, and it will ensure that there's no firewall appliance which is going to block the internal communication between the VMs with a port that you have established. And if it's said to be Linux VMs, to be a part of replication group, you need to ensure that the outbound port, that's your 2000, let's say 20,004, which is manually opened, will have the guidance of specifying the Linux versions that you're going to use. So as of now, the text, whatever you have seen, the images that you have seen, covers about the replication that you can perform from Azure to Azure. And not just that, you also need to do the post-production, right? You need to do a drill test, which is an important step. So that we call it as a test failover. You can use a recovery plan to trigger a test failover. You can like always complete a test failover on an app before running it to a full failover. And the test failover helps you to check whether the app comes up on the recovery side or not. If you find you have missed something, you can trigger a cleanup and then you can rerun the test failover once again here. And each app is going to be unique. So you need to build the recovery plans that are customized for each application, and you will run a test failover on each of them. You will also be running a test failover multiple times until you are sure that the app recovers smoothly. And here is about the recovery plans. So you can, recovery plans helps you to define a systematic recovery process by creating small independent units that you can go with a failover. And a unit typically represents an app in your environment, and a recovery plan defines how the machines will fail over and the sequence in which they start after the failover. So with all this discussion about your recovery service plans, I'm just gonna extend another probably I would take some 45 minutes to 1 hour to make sense about this migration strategy to cloud with ASR, that's your Azure to Azure replication plans. We will come up with a workload to see how the replication can be done. And we'll also be sticking to the questions that you have. Any questions until this?
Hi, Abdul. I have one question regarding the backup. So,
Yes, Jeff.
one differentiation between the regular third-party backup software to the Azure backup software is there is a limitation that how much backup we can take within a day. So will not be that a constraint considering the backup provided by Azure as a full-fledged backup?
We have a limitation actually. So let's say if you're performing an Azure backup, no, you can just go the snapshots, all these things can be performed, but then the backup as like only once a day you can run as such in Azure backup. Oh, so that's the limitation point that we have. You cannot run like couple or three backups for a day like that in a VM. So that's one kind of limitation
Right.
that we have still. Yeah.
I have one question. Like, suppose regarding the restoring,
Mhm.
daily will take the as per policy as a backup policy, it will take the incremental backup. First time only it will take the full backup. I hope is it
You're
correct?
right. Yes. Yes.
So when restoring the thing, suppose incremental backup how is available. Now when restoring the thing, it's how is the restore from the incremental backup full VM?
You saw that we have a cache that's available here, no? You see a storage cache which is available, so that would help you to perform like the incremental backups to be restored from a complete virtual machine that you have. So if I'm not wrong, your question is that you have a VM which is running at a, let's say the source which is said to be at on-premise, and you're trying to perform a backup. You're going to maintain it on the Azure, let's say, for example. So in those cases, you're saying that how the incremental backup can work for my complete VM. Am I right, Kiran?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, so in that case, you should have seen that the deck which I was showing you, you have a snapshots which can be performed. So for incremental backup, your snapshot is going to refer about on like what kind of point the backup, the previous backup was performed, and from the point interval where it has been dropped, no, that can be referred from the snapshot, and it will then again perform a full backup for you.
Okay, so that means it's suppose I'm going to restore that virtual machine running last 2 months onwards. First time is taking the full backup, and
Mm.
last 2 months onwards it's taking the incremental backup.
Okay.
Suddenly yesterday my morning time is like my virtual machine gone. Something happened. I want to restore it. In this
Mm.
case, it's a lost snapshot. What how I can restore it so that I can get the full backup when is the first day. It's that backup as well as the lost backup, that snapshot. Using that, it entirely restore the entire data. Is it right?
That's right, Kiran. But then I would say that in a implementation point, no, your snapshot is gonna be maintained on Azure storage. So there might not be chances that your snapshot might get lost, or there will be an outage that would happen on the recovery of your snapshot as such. So a leakage on a point of snapshot will not be a case. Your understanding is right, but then the scenario that you say, what in case of the snapshot goes off? No, that would not be a case when we speak on any CSP environment.
Okay.
Yeah. All right.
And another
Yeah.
another question is regarding ASR. ASR means we are protecting the virtual machine, but I'm like getting the customer requirement. I'm changing again VM sizes or additional disk or increasing the disk space. These all those things. It automatically take the ASR. It will take care about these all those things, or we have to configure any manually.
No, this is something that you need to do in a manual operation. So when you go for your Azure environment, you're going to have your source, isn't it? Like let's say your source is going to run at DS1 underscore V2, and you have some A0 machine that's running at the target location, since it's going to be just in the case of backup. So if you're planning for any, let's say a scale up operation that you need to do, then it is a manual operation. The resizing or a scaling operation that you're going to do, ASR will not take care of those things. Ideally, in a real-time perspective, what we used to do is that the secondary region, we always go with coming up with a reduced size of machine. We will not use like the same standard of machines which we have in the production environment as such.
Okay, what about disk? These all those things like it's a additional disk I attached it. How it will automatically the disk also will come in the coming to like when replicating the snapshot or recovery point. It will take care, or we have to manually add it.
Yes, disk replication is going to be a part of your ASR. So you no need to do it. Instead, Microsoft will be performing the ASR. I mean, the ASR service is going to take care of the replication points.
Okay, so nothing to from our end whenever disk any additional disk or anything. So
Yes,
it will
yes,
automatically replicate it. Yeah, thank you.
that's going to be a service of ASR.
Uh, Hi, this is Kaushik here. I just have a one question. In case of ASR, is it on the DR side itself? Is there will be any active DR means secondary VM will be up or it will be in a shutdown mode like the other DRM tool? It will be only will be up when it will DR will trigger.
Yes, sir, that understanding is right. So in an ASR, your secondary regions that you're going to come up with, let's say the target region that you're going to come up with, no, the DR plan will be always at, I mean, it's going to be at a shutdown state. And when there is an outage that happens, Microsoft is going to pull up all the records from the source towards the secondary region that we have. So you will not be, you no need to perform any kind of operations. So replication is going to be in the hands of Microsoft. I mean, having a synchronized replication between the primary region and the secondary region. And in case if the primary region goes down, it's going to be the responsibility of Microsoft that the request will be routed towards your secondary region as such. And only during the outage, your secondary region will go on live. So ideally, what happens is that the costing part, no, the costing is going to be only for the duration. The compute cost I'm speaking about. I'm not speaking about ASR part, cost. I'm speaking about costing for the compute environment, your virtual machine environment. You'll be paying only for the duration where it was running.
Okay,
You're getting
thank
it?
you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
got it.
Okay, I have a question for
And
Lohit. Excuse me, Kiran. Lohit, what exactly will be replicated from the VNet perspective? So, Lohit, whatever the architecture that you have, like a virtual network, the subnets that you have, including your network security groups which you have defined, no, the same will be replicated towards your secondary region. The reason is when the request gets routed, when the request gets routed to the secondary again, you need to keep the ports to be opened up, and there's nothing like you go again, you do it manually. You have no idea when the outage could happen, right? So the VNet, the complete A to Z things, including your subnet configurations, NIC configurations, don't consider public IP. It's going to be responsibility of Microsoft. You go with other things like the network security group. Okay, all these things will be replicated towards your target location as well. Yeah. Hi, Imran. I have a question with regard to the last session you conducted. Can we move Azure VMs back up to on-premise Hyper-V after commit or complete to Azure? And apart from VHD download, is there any way to achieve this? Like, yes, you can perform the backup operations. Like you, if I'm not wrong, your question is that you're saying I have a VM which is running on Azure and you need to take a disk backup, keep it at your on-premise environment as such. Yes, you can do it. You can either work from like exporting the data from your on-premise to Azure, or you can even import the data which is set to be from Azure to on-premise as such. So to do this, you again need to go with Azure backup. You have retention policies as well. If not, you can even trigger the process to say that you need to import the backup from Azure Cloud environment.
Sorry, Feroz, sorry. This is Imran here.
Yes.
The question is actually different. So let me more elaborate into. So see, the question is regarding hypervisor to Azure migration, okay, using ASR. In the case after we complete and commit the migration, like for example, like we have completely migrated all the virtual machines to the Azure, okay, and
Okay.
we don't have the hypervisor now, okay, and after maybe 2 years or maybe after some time, if in case if I want to bring all these servers back because of some costing issues, so is there any way we can revert it back after completing the migration, or we just have to download the VSC and that's the only alternative?
No, there's nothing like you don't have an architecture to say that you will revoke again from the Azure to on-premises. The only way is that you need to go with a VHD download and you need to prepare the infrastructure once again at the on-prem. It's common with all cloud service providers, not just with Azure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Hi Ajit, I want to know the strategy to reduce downtime while doing migration. Ajit, it's like a way long discussion. We covered it on the previous session that we had. And I would say that you can refer to the architecture which we had in the previous discussion, right? You have the recording which is available on YouTube, and that should help you out. Well, with that, I will just keep on hold. I will move to the tour on exploring about this ASR. And we will then stick back to the questions once when we are done. So here I would say, give me a moment. You see this? I have my, let me go to the resource group and I would say consider this machine that we have here, okay, your Hyper-V machines. And when I go to this resource group, you can still find like we have the data disk, you have virtual network, okay, you have the Hyper-V LAN, we have the NAT network security group, all these things. So consider a company which is planning to implement a number of high availability provisions for the services which is already running on Azure. They are not having a sufficient. I mean, they don't have a satisfaction to say that they have addressed the expectation of RPO and the RTO that we have. So to address these things, you need to you need to explore the capabilities of ASR. So you, as of now, you have a workload which is running on Azure, but then you need to come up with an ASR which takes the role of hoster on your secondary site. So ASR, you can integrate here. You can automatically and continuously replicate the workloads running on the physical or let's say even the virtual machines from the primary to secondary region. And here on this tour, you will be making sense about how you can configure ASR, how you can perform a test failover, and how the planned failover can be performed and the unplanned failover can be performed as well. So let me start going up with this virtual machine and we will try connecting for this server machine. Okay. So go here, you can find the Hyper-V, a VM which is running on. And let me try connecting for this. So I will say connect the RDP, download the RDP file, and we shall try connecting for this. Let me see connect. Okay, so let me go connecting here. Let's say yes for this. And we will keep the, in your server manager, you need to turn off the IE enhanced security configurations. There we go. So here in this remote machine, I will go to the local server and I will keep this IE enhanced security configuration to be turned off. So let's say off for both of these things. And on this machine, you can go towards Microsoft Edge. I don't think we have the Edge that's downloaded. Yeah, we don't have it. So either Edge or Chrome something. We need to log into Azure portal and now we don't have the support for it. So let's try doing it here. I would say download this Chrome. Say download Chrome. And here now you can do the Windows Server evaluations. You need to go for the Windows Server evaluations and you will download a copy of your Windows Server 2019 virtual hard disk here. Let's wait for this installation to be completed. Yeah. So let me go now, and I would say go for this evaluation page. You see this, we have Windows Server 2019 evaluation which can be done. So on this page, you can say get started for free. Okay, and you can get this to be downloaded. So let's say download this. I'm sorry, Windows Server 2019. It's set to be on cloud. Give me a moment. 2019. I'll say I need it as a VHD, and let's click on continue. So it will ask you for details. This is all mandatory. Let's give something here, and work address. We say continue, and we should try downloading this. So you see the file which gets downloaded here. I will look for this on my downloads now, and we should wait for this. So now you see we have the VHD which we have, downloaded. Let me cut this, okay, and I will keep it on my C drive, or let's say in Hyper-V. Okay, let's go here. We will create a folder, and we should keep it to be saved over here. Okay, let me say VHD folder here. So the folder name is set to be VHDs, and here I will store it. Now let me go to the Hyper-V manager. So I will click here, and I can say go for Hyper-V manager. It's getting loaded. Yeah, can you see this? We have the Hyper-V manager. Let's go for this. And explore this Hyper-V manager. You can like put up a new virtual machine beside here. You see, you have a new in this node. You find new. Okay, click on this and say that you will have a virtual machine. Start with the VM. You just click on next, and you put up a virtual machine here. So name, let me say it's gonna be, for example, Dear Azure VM. And let's store the virtual machine in a different location. You can select this, and you say you will store it on the F drive which we have. Let me go up here, and we shall create a new folder, and let's say it will be on VMs. Right, let me click on select folder, and now click on next. You will be here specifying the generation. You have two generations here. The Gen 2 supports with UEFI for 64-bit, and for supporting, this is the most used one for enterprise, like 32 and 64-bit with a Hyper-V. So let's select Gen 1. And the startup memory, you can exit with the default that you have. And you can also configure the networking. So for here, click on the connection, you can find nested switch, select this. And you do have like a virtual hard disk. Okay, so here in the virtual hard disk, let's say use an existing virtual hard disk. And let's go for the F drive here. You have Hyper-V, go for VHDs, and you see here we have it. Okay, you can look at the file here. You can just click on open and click on next now. Okay, so you will get a summary, and you can click on finish. So this goes with a new virtual machine now named as Dear Azure VM. And I can try connecting for this machine once when it's done. So you say start for this machine, select this and click on start. The machine gets started here. And now say connect for this machine. You see this machine gets spin up now. Let's accept for the license agreement and we'll perform a reboot for this machine now. So as of now, you have seen that we are prepared deploying an Azure VM, and we have like Hyper-V into it, okay, with the nested virtualization that we have. Give me a moment. Let me get this Hyper-V to be configured, the machine to be configured with the license agreement, and we will put up the ASR now. Well, it's getting spinned up. Just bear with me. Well, on screen, please. So let's give up these things. Okay, I will say India. Okay, let's scroll down. Click on next. Let's accept for the license agreement. So it will be looking for password. Let's go for password here. Well, so let's click on finish, and that performs a restart now. You'll be getting a machine now. You should see that it will be looking for the password once when it gets booted. And here at this point, let me open up this log. Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Let's go up here. I have the actions here. Let's select Control Alt Delete. And let's go up the password. So once when this gets looped up, okay, you can perform a restart. You can go to the Powershell and you can try restarting the same. Okay, this has been booted, and you scroll down. You go for the start. Let me go to the start. You have Windows PowerShell. Okay, try running this Windows PowerShell as an administrator. Let's say more, and run this as administrator now. So here let's select computer name. Okay, I can say rename computer, and let's say a new name. Let's give it as, yeah. So let's give it as easy. This has a certification touch base, so I will say 303 to a VM1, and let's try restarting the same. You see, it gets restarted now. In the meantime, let's go. We will have the ASR to be deployed. Okay, so on this VM, you see we have this 30312 machine. Okay, so on this machine, you go to the Azure Site Recovery. Let me go up here. I'll sign into my Azure portal. And here, let's try creating ASR, okay, or Azure Site Recovery. I'll say create a resource and serve for recovery service vault. Oh, let's try here. Can you see this? We have recovery service vault. Let's select this, and I'll say a new recovery service vault to be created. You can pick the resource group. So let's give a new resource group name. Lab resource group. And the vault name. So let me say again, 31312B. Okay, resource vault name. And it's going to be at the name of the region. This should be different from the one which we deployed earlier with the virtual machine. So you see the earlier one which I deployed, it's running on East US. So this time I would say I will deploy this at West US. Okay, and let's try creating this now. So create. Once when this is done, we'll be configuring the recovery service vault. So go to resource, and to configure this, you're there on the recovery service vault. Okay, go to the properties here. And can you see this? We have the diagnostic settings, you have the backup configurations. You can go with the backup configuration and you can set this to be enabled. So click on update for this backup configuration. And you see the backup configuration which goes with the cross region on. So here for the locally, I will go with the replication type which is set to be locally redundant, and let's click on save. So this is where you're going to configure the backup, the one which we were discussing on the deck. And remember, this storage replication type cannot be changed once when you start protecting the items. Now you have the security settings. We have updated this. Let's go scroll down. We have security settings. Let's click on update. And you see we have the soft delete. Okay, you can delete, disable this. Soft delete, you know, right? In case if you're having the data to be accidentally deleted, then you can recover it. So that's called a soft delete. So I'm disabling this. You have these options which you can configure again for security settings. So let me click on save. And now let me implement the Hyper-V protection by using ASR. So let's go with the target Azure environment, and we will put up a DR VNet all. Okay. So let's close this and open up a new portal again. And create a virtual network for the DR one. So let's say create a resource and create a virtual network. Click on create and give up a name for the resource group here. So I would say AZ again 312C lab resource group. I click on OK for this. And the name of the machine, let's say VNet. Let's say DR VNet. And this is going to be the name of the region on which we deploy the recovery service vault in your previous one. So it's West US. So I will say West US. And if you want, again, you can like configure the IP address all. Okay, it's based on your configuration that you need. So for this, I no need of any of these things. I'll accept with the default. So let me say review with create. Let's click on create. You see the VNet has been created now. And inside this, I will add the subnet now. So go here, click on, just give me a moment. I see the IPv4 addressing here. It starts with 10.1. Oh, that's not fair. Just give me a moment, please. I'll try deleting it and let me create it once again. Let's try editing this. And we should try creating a new VNet again. So go to the resource groups. We have the resource group here. I'll say create a virtual network. Let's click on create. And okay, resource group, the name of the VNet. And I'm going to deploy this at West US. Go for the IP address. Okay, give this IP address, please. So let's remove this. And on the IP address space, I will type 10.7.0.0/16. And let's add a subnet here. So subnet will be 0 and 10.7.0.0/24. This is set to be the subnet name. We are going to add a subnet here. You just click on add for this. And now you can try creating it. So you say review with create and click on create to get it done. Now for performing the test, now you will go with another VNet to be created as well. So look for the virtual networks again here. So for virtual network, and there you can say create another new virtual network. Resource group, let's select the same resource group that we have. Okay. And name, I will say EZ30312C. This is set to be test for the drill test that we're going to perform. So test virtual network. And yeah, you know this is set to be the data center region. That's your West US. Okay. And go to the IP address again. And select the IP address here. You can remove this. And you can say it's 10.7.0.0/16. And you add a subnet as well. So click on add subnet and say subnet 0. And here let's give the address again 10.7.0/24. Now click on add. Let's try creating it now. So review with create and create it finally. I hope you're getting synced up with the architecture. I am creating a drill test VNet. And for the cache to hold the data all, we'll be creating a storage account as well. So let this be there. And now we will go for storage accounts. So look for storage account. And I'll say add a new storage account here. Select the subscription. Okay. And the resource group, you see the resource group should be the C1, which we have used for secondary region. And give up a storage account name. So let me say Dear Azure, Dear SDR. And region should be the one where we deploy the ASR. So West US. And type, let me go with the standard V2 kind. For a cost cutoff, let me use locally to tenant. And let's try creating this now. So create storage account. And now let's try implementing the production of your Hyper-V machines using the recovery service bot. Let's wait for this creation. Okay, so this is done. Now go for the recovery service vault which we created. Okay, so you click here and you look for the recovery service vaults. You can find the vault which we created here. Click on this. And here in the site recovery section, you can see like we can get started now. So give me a moment. We have a site recovery. And we can find the Hyper-V machines here. Yeah, Hyper-V machines to Azure. See, this was the one which we said. You have a step-by-step execution. So first you need to prepare the infrastructure. So click on prepare infrastructure. And for the deployment planning, you click here and you say that you have done these things. You have done the deployment planning and click on next. You get the source settings. So in the source settings, let's say that we need to prepare you're using your system center. And for this, you just say no. Okay, we don't have any kind of those things. And for the Hyper-V site, you can say that you need to get a Hyper-V site. Okay, so Dropbox, click on the Dropbox in the Hyper-V site and just give up a name. Okay, add a Hyper-V site. And let's say it's going to be Hyper. Okay, it's not accepting space. That's fine. Let me click on OK for this. That creates your Hyper-V site now. And now you click on the Hyper-V server, okay, and you can keep this to be added up. So click on Add Hyper-V server, and you will be finding a download link. It's getting loaded. Okay, you see we have a download the installer of the Microsoft Azure Site Recovery Provider, and then you need to download the Vault registration key. So let's say download this first.
Hi, Rashid. Darak here.
Hello there.
There is one query that if Azure Site Recovery can do the whole replication of all the infrastructure components as well as the PaaS components.
Now this is mostly for infrastructure service. So PaaS in the sense, are you asking about web app?
Web app, load balancer, web app, IoT hub, and event grid, and that kind of all the components.
Yes, it can replicate, but then mostly like Azure Site Recovery is for if you have any load balancer components, all that can be replicated, but web app cannot be done. Web app
Okay.
is going to be a PaaS service, right? So Microsoft is going to manage. You should have seen that when you create a web app, you also have plans like premium plans and isolated plans. So it's a responsibility of
Yeah.
Microsoft to ensure that the data will be always available for you. You don't need to put up any DR for that. Whereas if you speak about routing the traffic towards multiple servers, then you can put up a traffic manager on. But in an implementation point, web app is not supported by ASR.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for SQL servers,
SQL servers can be done. Yes, you have SQL Server which is supported, but we don't have like Oracle database. Oracle database is now available only for internal people. Like it's on beta testing now.
okay.
Yeah.
So with one more query, so with basic load balancer, standard load balancer, and application gateway can be same way replicated with Azure Site Recovery.
Sorry, Tarak, I missed your voice. Can you come again?
Yeah, surely. With basic load balancer, standard load balancer, and application gateway can be replicated
Yes.
with all the rules and all the configurations.
No. You have like only the logs which can be taken up. But then, if you are planning for VNet or if you are planning for the load balancer, I mean any infra components. I'm not speaking about compute. I'm speaking about the components. Okay, those things has to be performed like manually. You need to put up a load balancer. You need to connect with the server machines. Then ASR cannot do this.
Okay.
Yeah. And hi, Ajit. Just wanted to know this class is only for ASR. We are not covering Azure Migrate. Ajit, the Azure Migrate was covered in the previous, uh, session, right? We had a part one on which we covered Azure Migrate. And today it is about ASR as per the request of the learners who joined us in the previous session. I'm not sure like if I had you on the previous session.
Hey
You can.
Abdul, yeah, I was not there. That's why I mean both the questions. It's already been answered. So I'll go through that, the video.
All right, all
And
right.
apart
Yeah.
from this, just quickly want to check. In that video, did you have covered this Azure AD migration part, the user migration also,
No,
or
it
you
was
are
not
going?
about the user migration. It was on the app layer and the DB migrations that we had.
Okay, for
Yeah.
user migration, we didn't have covered. Okay.
No, it was not covered. Yeah.
Abdul, hi, this is Kalaka here. I have a query on DR part. It is not nothing to relate with, might be silly for you. Okay, so what I want to know, when we have the primary site that is having a different set of IP address, right? I mean, it is a different subnet, different range of IP address. And when we configure the DR, you have given 10.7.0.0,
Mm.
isn't it? So how whenever I will initiate the DR, how my DNS switch and all will happen?
Your DNS name that you're going to propagate, let's say you will give up a zone custom domain mappings that you do, no? So this is going to be connected with your, let's say like a traffic manager, and that will be collected towards your two regions as well. Ideally, your traffic manager will be connected with the primary region, and you remember we were discussing about an installation of agent that we have. The agent can perform the logs to connect the secondary region. So routing the request towards the secondary region from your DNS zone where the traffic manager will be done by this extension that will be added on the primary region. You're getting it, Kalaka? There will be an extension which will be installed. It's a backend
Yeah,
process.
yeah, you
Okay.
showed that download, which is not coming up for me. That agent installation you are talking about, right?
Yes, exactly. That's an extension that we have.
Okay, okay. And what about AD? Because my AD is still in on-prem and my primary site is down, right? So if I do the replication also, will it work for my? I mean, if I have my app is an on-prem and that server I have configured for DR, how those authentication will happen, which is happening earlier with my primary site on-prem AD.
So if I'm not wrong, you should have added your VPN gateways. Am I right? It's a hybrid cloud, so you should have added the VPN gateways. And in the
Okay.
VPN gateways, you will be adding the network whitelisting of which port has to be allowed as such. You can refer the deck which I was speaking about. We had the port numbering for Windows and Linux machines. And in Windows only, you're going to have your Active Directory. You might be having like Windows Server, some old versions, or even the newer one. The port is going to be common, and that has to be configured with your VPN that you have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just need to turn on my DR site and the authentication and everything will be taken care of by that Azure VPN.
Your DR site will be turned on by default, right? Like what you're seeing now. Once when we spin up, it's going to be turned on by default. So the point here is that you just need to make sure that the proxy will be opened as. That's it. You have to keep your proxy to be configured, and that will help you to do. That's it. You no need to perform like on or off operations there.
So I mean, how we configure that proxy? Isn't that taken care by the agent itself?
No, no. You see here we were adding up. Now let's say that this is your DR machine, for example. You have networking, no, and you also have a virtual network which is connected towards the security rules. So here we need to keep it opened up. Just same like this, you're going to have for your target machine, isn't it? That's connected for the VPN.
Okay.
Give me a moment. Let me check for this. So I'm sure on my.
Yeah. Hi, Abdul. This is Mohan.
Hello, Mohammed.
Yeah. I just want to know that this SQL server in a VM in on-prem, how it will be useful in this scenario? Will it be allowed to migrate from on-prem to this cloud?
Yeah, for SQL Server, ideally, if you're looking for a SQL Server at on-premise to just migrate towards a SQL Server on cloud, then you don't need to go for this service. If it's an entire architecture, you can use this, like app layer and data layer that you have. If it's just a SQL Server that you're trying to move, then you have a service called Database Migration Service. You go here, you can find data migration service.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that should help
That
you
I,
out. Yeah,
okay. So in
because
this case, we do
yeah,
only
sorry.
for VMs only to be migrated. Am I right?
Exactly. Why I'm
Okay.
recommending your DMS is that you might be having some schema changes, isn't it? Anyhow, I hope the recommendation or your scenario that you're going to work is on a like is in a need that you have like end of support. Let's say from SQL Server 2008, you're planning to move for some newer versions. So you need to work on schema updates all. And when you go for the DMS, it can give you the recommendation that what are the changes that you need to do.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Just before I just heard like SQL Server perspective also, it will be useful. I mean, in the which scenario it will be used?
So I repeat, like I said, the app layer and the data layer that you have, consider an entire architecture. No, you will be having an app layer and the data layer as well. So in those cases, you can use ASR.
Mm-hmm.
You first
Okay.
use Azure Migrate, and in the post production, you use ASR to set a DR plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay then. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, we have a pointer from Lohit as well to SQL Server IaaS. SQL Server on to SQL Server IaaS is configuring AAG between them. Yeah. Yeah, that's like an add-on. Well, I'm here with ASR. Thank you very much to our friend. Someone was adding up this now. I guess his name is Kaus. Yeah. Thanks, Kaus, for bringing this in. So I have the ASR extension now with me. It looks for, you can begin it, okay, by installing the configuration all. So here on this file, I'll just say go with the installation for this. Let's say next and accept the license agreement. It looks for the registration key. Okay, so you need to look it for the
Can you
registration.
share your screen, please? You are not seeing your screen. Can you share your screen, please?
Yeah, I have shared the screen. Is it the same for others as well?
No, we are able to see that.
Okay, okay, cool. So here it's looking for the site recovery registration key. You can find the site recovery registration key here. Give me a moment. See, we have it here. Okay, can you see this? The registration key. You can click on download, and we have it here. Just hold on. Yeah, so click on browse and locate the key. And let's go for the next. So it will ask you for internet settings to be configured. So here in the internet settings, you can say like what you're going to use. See, we have like ASR without a proxy server. And if you have any proxies to be configured, you can select the next one. This does your prerequisites check.
So this activity you are doing in your hypervisor machine or any VM you can take it from?
No, I'm doing it on the hypervisor machine. Can you see this? There's a minimum memory and CPU checks. It gives you an obligation, right? It gives you like an allegation saying that these are the checks that we have performed and you need to take up an action for these things. And you click on next. You have SQL DB, then you can configure this SQL DB as well. Okay, you can put up a password and you can give up the same. So we don't have these things actually in our scenario. So if you have a SQL DB or something, you can keep it added up here. And same like that, you can put up the environment details. Okay, you can have the installation, and finally you can get this to be done. So once when these things are done, you have your target environment which should be available. Okay, I covered this in the previous modules. Okay, we had the database as well. So password, let's give a password here. I would say. Next. And do you want to protect the VMware virtual machines? You can say yes if you have a VMware VM, and no. So here we are using like Hyper-V. Let's say no for this, and I'm going to install it now. You see the proxies, right? You can put up the network interface card. You can call the network interface card that you have. So I don't have any such things. Wait, let me click NIC. Okay, there's a nested switch NIC. Let's select this. And let's go with the next one. And we shall install it now. Can you see this? It collects the IAS features and what are the third-party components that you have to be installing the same as well. And it will also put up a agent for the ASR over here.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you repeat again? Why do we used in a MySQL configuration in this just before we were seeing? No?
Yeah, Mohan. We are replicating the same. Like, see, any application that you come across, it will be having your database as well. So for that, or is your questions based out of the DMS which we were speaking before, or you're asking about why we need this MySQL configuration?
Yeah, just for MySQL. MySQL just before we have seen, no?
The one which you're seeing on the screen, am I right?
Yes, correct. That is the one only.
Okay. So here, why we are using MySQL is that your Azure Site Recovery will be looking for setting up the configuration of the DR plan and it needs like all the log files that you have. Let's say it might be like VMware, or it might be even for your let's say Hyper-V machines that you have. It has to connect with MySQL, and it has to look for the logs, like the data that you have modified, the logs that you have, and if you have any database which has been connected towards it. And what this will be having is your host ID, your name, your IP address, the voice type that you have in the source, right? All these things will be collected and it will be stored on a MySQL. And that's exactly why we are configuring it here.
Yeah. Okay then. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the info.
Okay. See, after this gets configured, no, you see that it's going to install your Microsoft ASR provider. Then you'll be having your target server to be called. Okay, it will be installing an agent on the target server, and you find like configuring the same and having up the ASR agents, and it will be validating the server configuration. So once when all these things are done, you see like you will be having the ASR, which calls the machine. Then you will be having your Hyper-V machines. So simply when you go here, wait, can you see this in your replicated items? You'll be seeing the machine which we configured, and you click on that. You can then see like the machine which can perform the drill test for you. Okay, you will be able to perform the test failover. You can do the replication patterns. You can check the RTO and RTO using the same. Is that okay? This takes like a quite long time.
Hi, this is Kaushik here. So I have a questions regarding where the installation is happening. Is it on the VM you have configured the Hyper-V once again through the Hyper-V you have configured 2019 nested VM. On that it is installing, or it is installing on the server itself?
It's not installing on the server, it's happening on the Hyper-V. You saw here when I picked up, I said that it's on a nested machine on which we have the Hyper-V. The machine that you're seeing on the screen, it's not over there. You're getting it? It's on a nested machine that we have.
Yeah, on the nested machine it is installing, right?
Yes, yeah. So other than this, we do have like you can do SAP migrations. Okay, you can go with Azure with database migrations all. So this can be, I would refer, you can see the customer stories on my website here. You go for CodeSizzler, my office website. And we have the white papers here. Can you see this? Migrating your SAP workloads to Azure. So few of the white papers which we have worked, you can see those things here. We also have like digital transformation. And we have the high availability which can be achieved. You can find all these white papers which can help you a lot. Let me give you a glimpse of it in the meantime as it gets configured. See, we did for ETL operations for the data warehouse. So these are the white papers which we did for our customers. So this is your enterprise grade level of security with SAP migrations that we did for Walgreens. You click here, you can find the scenario and how this migration was performed, or what we have achieved with this migration. And just same like that, we have it for Azure AI. Right, this was another one which we did for Walgreens itself. It's a digital transformation journey, and Azure Migration Center for team system, we implemented this. You can see like the cost cut of which we achieved, and the business plan that they have for the migration, all you can find it here. And we did IoT as well for Emirates. So here is about the implementation again of having the free Wi-Fi provided for Emirates customers who will be on the launch. So you see that it's there for the Emirates that's available at the UK, and how this IoT was implemented with a smart CCTV device test and having the Wi-Fi to be provided for everyone. So the architecture and the white paper can be seen here. And this is for data warehouse, which we implemented. So this data warehouse was for like having your Azure Synapse Analytics for JOT. It's an internet media company, JOT, and we tried implementing like having your big data analytics to be performed and automating the process using like ADF. Okay. You can make sense of these things when you get time.
I have one scenario in which I have configured one application gateway in one environment, and with his it is two virtual VMs with Windows Server 2019 OS, and I need to replicate this same environment in but this environment is in one central US region. Now I want to replicate this same environment in another region. So will ASR able to help me?
Okay, Derek, if I'm not wrong, your question is that you have a Windows Server environment which is at some location, right? And that seems to be a
Yes.
standalone. Am I right? It does not have a DR.
No, DR has been not configured.
Yeah. So then it's like you go with ASR, no? You can do the DR with that.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you come up with your architecture once again? What are the components that you have with your application?
I have application gateway configured, and in one application gateway, I have configured two VMs with for the load balancing purpose. And apart from this two VMs, I have Azure SQL databases as a service, PaaS components.
Okay. So application gateway configured with web servers, and
Yes.
you're trying to connect with Azure site recovery of the same. Yes, you
Yeah.
can do it actually. You can configure with a hybrid data. You can come up with an application gateway that can survive for both your web traffic and for the database layers that you have. So you say you want to put up the ASR, you want to keep the same replication on a secondary region, you can do it. So manually, you need to configure your application gateway in that sense.
Okay, so VMs and SQL databases can be replicated, but application gateway I have to begin from the scratch.
Yeah,
Is it correct?
the application gateway and the proxies that you have with the application gateway, like you would have put up the listeners, right? You will have listeners,
Yes.
the idle timeout, public IP. Those things you need to configure in a manual way.
Okay.
All right, friends. Well, I'm just wrapping it up once again. Like you see, this should get configured. This will take a quite long time. This should take at least like 30 minutes. So once when this gets configured, you can find it. See, it gets registered. Okay, you find this. We have given up the vault to get registered, so you can find it on the recovery service vault with a nested one which we gave up. And you click on this in your replicated items. You can find the virtual machine which got replicated. You click on the replicated VM, and you perform a test failover on that. Okay, and that would help you to check the replication status, whether it's healthy, and what's the RPO, what's the RTO, what's the failover readiness. Okay, and the infrastructure view as well. You even get a mapping kind of structure, I would say an architecture, and that would take like 15 minutes of time after the test failover gets done with with the infrastructure view to let you know how it has been mapped as such. So this is how your Azure site recovery works. So we are wrapping up this web series, the webinar one, with like the first one where we have been speaking about Azure Migrate. And you should not stop it once when you're done with Azure Migration. It's recommended to do a backup or it's recommended to do a replication, which is a mandatory step to keep a DR point for enterprise scenarios. Well, let me know if you have any questions. If not, we can wrap with this for this session. And we'll be having the further sessions on which we are planning to move with SAP. And we have few discussions going on to come up with IoT series as well in the upcoming webinars.
Hi, Abdul. This is Lohit here.
Yes, Lohit.
Thank you for sharing your knowledge. I just want to understand, like, do you recommend any books or blogs, like, where we can continue our journey? If I want to be a migration expert, so, what do you suggest as an expert?
There's actually a tech community which is from Microsoft. I'm not sure if you know that. Have you heard about it?
I know tech community, but I am not sure whether there was anything for Microsoft. I
Yeah.
generally follow the database thing over here.
The docs actually don't, I mean, in reference architecture, you can find for Azure reference architecture, don't follow the docs, right?
Okay.
If you're
Okay.
looking for any comments or like Q&As on which the steps have been resolved, you either need to go with this tech community or you go with your Azure reference architecture, please. That should be a recommended one, which you
Okay.
can see. If you are like a fresher who is trying to make sense about the migration, all, then the docs can work. But
Okay.
then for any like detailed step, you can go with Azure Reference Architecture. That's and I mean Azure Reference Architecture and the tech community can work for you.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you.
All right, all right. Let me keep this shared on the chat. Well then, thank you so much for joining. Please keep us subscribed if you would like to hear more about the upcoming webinars that we have planned for. And thank you, Kasam. Thanks for arranging this as well. Thanks to